Thank you. um, just that's great. The lights are coming up a bit so I can see you. Just to ask the guys at the side if it's possible to have my timer on, just so that I know when to come into land. If you don't put my well done. All right, thank you. Well, this is our last session together, and I just want to say now, in case I don't manage it at the end, thank you so much for your warm welcome. My team and I, we have loved being with you once more. You're an amazing bunch of people, and I sent a text to my co-pastor of the church that we lead together in England, telling about the brutal way you attacked me the other night. And I can't believe it. He actually read the text out to the whole church on Sunday morning, and apparently they were roaring with laughter, and they want to see the video. But we've loved being with you. I've loved seeing what God is doing among you. I've loved having conversations with different ones of you. And what I want to do now, in just the few minutes before we finish, is really talk about something that, if I'm really honest, is the thing that I'm most passionate about at the moment. And I want to give my remaining years to see happen. I want to talk about what church is meant to be biblically, because I believe in local church. I believe local church is the hope for the world if we do it right. And I've been grieved over the years at seeing how sometimes, and I'm for the church. I've been pastoring a church the church I lead, we started it, there were 11 of us when we started 27 years ago. I'm still there. I'm going to be there till I die. Because it's my family, because it's my home, because it's where I belong. And that's how it's meant to be. That's how church is meant to be. And we live in a world that is utterly broken. Everybody must be able to see that now. And it is broken more than anything else by loneliness. So much of the emotional illness, so much of the stuff that we struggle with, our mental illness and all the things that we do. I know it's complicated. I know it's more than this. But one of the main things at root is loneliness. I live in a town called Watford, just outside London in England. And the mayor of Watford, the elected mayor of Watford, came to see Andy, my co-pastor, the other day. And Andy asked him, he said, look, you're the mayor of Watford. What would you say is the main problem, the main issue that is bedeviling our town? And without hesitation, he said, number one, loneliness. Number two, parking. The first one, parking, was number two, and parking's a big issue in Watford. But loneliness, he said, was number one. And we live in a world where there has never been more of us on this planet, and yet somehow we've never been further apart. When you can delete a friend at the press of a Facebook button, you know that our world is in trouble. A while ago, I saw on my Facebook news feed, someone said, put on their news feed, I've decided I have too many friends. So over the next 2-3 days, I'm going to delete about half of you. And I'm just writing this so that no one is hurt or upset if it happens to you. And I laughed at that. And then, now I pastor a church. I'm a leader. I go around the world doing stuff. I'm secure. I'm secure. Do you know, for the next 3 days, every 2 hours, I was looking at my Facebook to check if I'd been deleted or not. And you know what? We all struggle with that stuff. You know, when you want community without commitment, it's not real community. It's not real community. And there are so many who live in secret shame because they don't feel that anyone really knows them. And the fear is, for many, if people knew what I was really like, would they still accept me? Would they still want to know me? And the church, above all, is meant to be God's answer to that human problem. My colleague and friend Andy, a while ago, he was walking down the street and he met a young lady who'd been in our church, and he hadn't seen her for a while. So he said to her, "Hello, I haven't seen you for a while. Is everything all right?" And she said, "Nah, I've stopped going to church. I don't do church anymore. It doesn't do it for me." She said, "So what I do is," she said to him, she said, "I have church on my own on a Sunday." And he was curious, he said, "How do you do that?" And she said, "Well, on Sunday morning, after I get up, I shower, I get dressed, I put on one of my favorite worship albums from one of my favorite worship bands from around the world, and I worship to that. And then," she said, "after that, I listen to a podcast from one of my favorite preachers from around the world, and I listen to that." And she said, "That's my church." When I heard that, I wanted to find that young lady and I wanted to headbutt her. And I wanted to say, "You moron, that is not church. What are you talking about? After you've worshipped to one of the best worship bands from around the world that no local church can match, and after you've listened to one of the best talks from one of the best preachers from around the world, which no local church, except mine of course, could match, after you've done that, what do? Do you invite your teddies to come forward to give their lives to Jesus? What are you talking about? You can't do church on your own. There is no such flipping thing. We were created for community because we are made in His image. We are made in His image, and God is not one. God is three. God is community. He was community before we ever turned up. God didn't create you because He was lonely, because for eternity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit have been in love with each other. And God created us out of the overflow of the love that is in God. That phrase, "God is love," is meaningless if God is only one person. Because there's no such thing when it's just you. And I'll be really honest with you. I'm tired. I'm old now, and I used to go to so many church leaders conferences in England, and I just can't do it anymore. And they'd all be the same, and they bring some visiting speaker from some great, giant, huge, successful, rich church somewhere. And the talk would go like this. It was always the same. 6 weeks ago, our church had 43 people in it. And now there's 7 million of us. And we're planting congregations on Mars and Venus. And our budget is bigger than Texas. And you too could have a church like mine if you followed these 3 principles, these 4 ways, these 5 practices. And I used to believe that rubbish. I used to believe that nonsense. And I used to go back to my poor church, my poor flipping church. And I used to say, "I've just been to the conference. We need to do this. We need to change everything." And they were petrified about me going away. They were like, "Oh no, he's going to come back and we're going to have to change everything again. We're going to have to do the new way." And none of it. Our church didn't become 4 billion. And you know what? I even heard one church leader of a big, rich, successful church say at a pastor's conference, "You know what? If you want to have a big church, if you want to grow a big church, then what you've got to do is you've got to find the best. Find the best and buy the best. Spend whatever money you need to get the best people to be on your staff. And when you get the best, when you've bought the best, then you'll grow a big church." And I know what he was trying to say. He was trying to say, don't be insecure. Don't be, have gifted people around you and don't feel threatened by them. But I was sat there and I thought, how can you say that to the pastor of St. Botolph's in the Marsh, who's got a congregation of 32 and a dog? How's he or she ever going to buy the best? Some of us have got to raise the best for you to buy the best. And do you know, in a business, you hire and fire employees. In a family, you raise up sons and daughters. And God's call to us as the church is to raise up sons and daughters, because we're meant to be a flipping family. I see nothing in this book. Find me anything in this book that talks about business principles for a church. It's everything about family, everything about community, everything about belonging. And do you know why this is important in these days? It's always been important. It's because that's what the world is looking for. That's what people are yearning for. That's what people are desperate for. They're desperate for somewhere to belong. They're desperate for somewhere to be known. This isn't just, I'm not talking about family that's insular. I'm not talking about family. We're called, Jesus says, I'll read it. Jesus says in John 13, just before he went to the cross, a new commandment I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. And then he says something very interesting. By this, everyone will know you're my disciples if you love one another. He gives us one new commandment before he goes to the cross. And by the way, he repeats it in John 15. He says it twice. He says we're to love each other with the same quality and depth of love with which he loves us, because that's how people will know we belong to him. He gave the world a test to see. He said, world, test them to see if they're mine. And he didn't say, by this will everyone know you're my disciples if you have all the right doctrines, and I believe in good doctrine. He didn't say, by this will everyone know you're my disciples if you're filled with the Spirit till you shake and foam, and I believe in being filled with the Spirit. He said, by this will everyone know you're my disciples if you love each other. That's how they'll recognize me in you. That's how they'll recognize me in the midst. And over these few days, we've had a taste of that. We've had a taste of that. And I'm English. I'm English from a Greek background, so I'm not very good at some of your, so I'll say it wrong. Haremai? Haremai? I practiced and I still can't get it right. But you know what? The theme of this has been Haremai. Has been Haremai. And do you know, it will mean nothing if that stays at Easter camp. It will mean everything if we go home committed to saying and living out Haremai to the community around us, to those who are broken, to those who are hurting, to those who feel they have nobody. And I know what that is like. Do you know, to give a little bit of encouragement, 7 minutes, I'm going to get there, to give a little bit of encouragement to people. We live in a world of discouragement. We live in a world where people are always putting each other down, where people take glee in finding the faults of others and pointing them out. Our Twitter universe is sick. And I'm on Twitter and I read the stuff, and sometimes it breaks my heart. We live in a world of discouragement, and the church is meant to be the place of encouragement, the church of reaching out, the church of loving. And do you know what? People flourish when they're encouraged. People flourish. You see that. You know that one of the greatest heroes for me in the Bible is a disciple called Ananias. Because no one's heard of him except one thing he did. When God said to him, go to this guy called Saul of Tarsus who's blind and pray for him. And Ananias says, what are you talking about, Lord? He's killing Christians. He's persecuting us. And the Lord says, go and lay hands on him and restore his sight. For I have chosen him to be my instrument to preach the gospel to the Jews and the Gentiles. And I've shown him how much he must suffer for my name. Dear Ananias, he went, and there'd be no Paul without Ananias, and there'd be no Paul without Barnabas. There would be no Paul if Barnabas was not. There'd be no Paul if Barnabas was not was not there to encourage him, to cheer him on, to love him, to be there for him when no one else wanted to touch him. And I know what that's like, because you know what? I was broken. My childhood was a total mess. My dad was violent, and he used to hurt me, and I could never argue with him. And my mum was emotionally manipulative. I remember when I was 11, my mum called me into their bedroom, and she said, "Michael, I want to ask you a question. If I and your daddy get a divorce, who do you want to be with, me or your dad?" And at 11 years old, I had to think about stuff like that. They went to the casino, gambled all night, and left me as a little kid in charge of my younger brother and sister. I was terrified. And do you know what I did? I closed up. I closed in. I didn't know how to communicate with people. I didn't know how to love people. And then when I was 27 years old, I heard about this church where they prayed for people and stuff happened. And I thought, I just need to be there, because my heart is broken, because I'm a relational cripple, because I don't know how to do anything. And I went there. And for some reason, the pastor of the church and his wife, they took me in. For some reason, they loved me. And they saw things in me that no one else saw. And they encouraged me, and they cheered me on. And one day they asked me if I would give up my job as an accountant when I was 29 and be the youth pastor of the church. And do you know what? The pastor's wife, Mary, prayed for me, prayed with me every Friday. Every Friday. She prayed with me for an hour for 3 years. She prayed for me. And as she prayed for me, God began to heal my heart. You know what? They showed me how I could get in to their house through the garage. The door was always unlocked, and I would just walk in at any time like I was a child in the house. And I remember there was one year I had breakfast with them nearly every morning. I just turned up. I invited myself in. I would walk into the kitchen. I would say hello, and I'd hear them upstairs. Hello, hello, put the kettle on. We're coming down. That couple, they are now, he is 88, and his wife is a little bit younger and doesn't like me saying her age. But they're nearly the same age. And do you know, they have prayed for me. Listen to this. They have prayed for me every single morning for over 30 years. They have prayed for me. They prayed for me this morning, because they pray for me every morning. And do you know what? You know what? They're frail and they're elderly. And I still see them regularly. And they say to me, David says to me, "Mike, you know we love you. We're so proud of you. We love you. We pray for you every day." That changed my flipping life. And we can do that for one another. Find people that you can make committed relationships with. And guys, I say this. For some of you, you may not think it's relevant to you now, but it is, because you're the church not just of the future, you're the church of the present. Commit yourselves to building church as family, not as business. Build church that welcomes people. I finish with this. And if the band could start coming up, please, to give everyone hope that I'm telling the truth. With 1 minute and 51 seconds to go, I want to tell you one story about my church. And I love my church. I adore my church, because we try and do these things. These are the happiest years of my life. And my health's not brilliant, and I'm feeling old and all of that. But do you know why these are the happiest years of my life? Because I work with my best friends. I work with people I love and I adore. Husbands and wives, families, wonderful people, and we do church together. And in our church we have some recovery groups, and it's for those who are struggling with recovering from alcohol and drug abuse and gambling addictions and all of that. And this is absolutely true. At the end of November, I was told before a morning service, someone said to me that a lady called Yvonne in one of our recovery groups, that day, that Sunday was her 1-year anniversary of being alcohol and drug free. And so in the notices, guys, in the notices, I said, after I'd said about what was going to happen in the week, I said, Yvonne, where are you? Why don't you stand up? And she was a bit embarrassed and she stood up. And I said, we celebrate people's achievements in this family. And I said, this is the first anniversary of Yvonne being alcohol and drug free. When I said that, 700 plus adults at church started clapping and cheering, and they wouldn't stop. They were cheering Yvonne and clapping and giving her an ovation. And I saw the look on her face as she heard her family cheering her achievement. And you know, this is the amazing bit. The amazing bit is this. The following Wednesday, I had an email from another lady in our church, and she said, you won't believe this. She said, you will not believe this. I brought on Sunday morning for the first time ever to church my stepsister. She had never been to church before. And she said, the thing is, my stepsister is 7 months free of alcohol abuse. And when you did, listen, and when you did that for Yvonne, my stepsister turned to me and she was crying. And she said, is that what you do in your church for people like me? You celebrate people like me? And the answer is yes. That's exactly what the Church of Jesus is meant to do. For the sake of the world, for the sake of the lost, for the sake of those who don't yet know Jesus. Leave Easter camp and live out Hare Mai to those around you. Be the church of the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. God bless you.